like to switch to Senait Senay, who is also very much into the topic of the topic of disinformation. You also say that most of the time now the victims are blamed, and we should also get away from that. First of all, I want to present you. You're an adjunct assistant professor at the University of Minnesota in the US, and you're a specialist in disaster risk modeling, whether it's man-made or natural disaster. And you're the president of the Genocide Prevention in Ethiopia Association. So having heard what Jeff just told us, what is your opinion on that? Would you support him in these findings? Do you have evidence that is supporting this, or what is your analysis on that?
Thank you very much, Monica. Thank you for having me and for holding this program. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly well.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I agree with Jeff. There has been a rampant disinformation, misattribution of evidences, in general, deliberate misusing of data ever since this conflict started in northern Ethiopia, but also in general, ever since TPLF and with its coalition took over power in Ethiopia, because we know that the ethnic federalism system was only imposed by only a few players over Ethiopians, specifically Amharas, and a few other groups were not even on the table when this system was imposed. But lately, the past 3 years, and especially since COVID lockdown started, things got a lot worse because the problem went beyond even the Ethiopian borders. Unfortunately, international journalists actually started taking repetition as validation, started fishing for information on Twitter, on different social media, and literally taking it as truth just because it's repeated enough. We've seen there has been a Harvard study showing that there is rampant misinformation surrounding, almost all sides of the groups, but basically a lot of use of kind of bots on the TPLF side when things are repeated using bot accounts. I mean, generally, this is definitely not a topic to cover in 5 minutes. However, I'll do my best to give you major highlights. So when we talk about genocide, most people use the 10-point classification as a guideline for identifying genocide, or that was kind of made popular by the Genocide Watch organization, or the 5-point description that the UN uses to describe the elements of this genocide crime. I personally began to wonder, however, with the advent of digital technology that allows effective data falsification, that blaming the victims should also be included as a hallmark of genocide itself. Were more effective ways of hiding the truth than making the, there are no ways of making, effective ways of hiding genocide than the victims itself appear to be the killer. And this has happened against Amharas countless times. As for, Dave highlighted, and we have also covered this in the prequel of today's program, which we had early in the summer, Amharas and other selectively targeted identities were under attack in Ethiopia just for their ethnic identity ever since the ethnic federalism system was imposed in Ethiopia. That is in 1991 and onwards. But in the past, the attacks were simply hidden, as there is always a state-sponsored component to the attacks. And especially because Amharas were not politically organized along ethnic lines, not many really advocates raised awareness about it. But lately, when the change and, when that changed and Amhara advocacy groups started reporting on atrocities, the tactic to keep the genocide silent evolved into blaming the victim. So unfortunately, this is not limited to just one group in Ethiopia, or not even within the borders of Ethiopia. Just to give you an example, on March 2nd, 2021, the VOA, that is Voice of America itself, to our shock, while reporting on an alleged massacre in Aksum, Tigray, where Amhara forces were not even on location, misused a footage from the burial ceremony of 1,600 Amharas that were murdered by TPLF in Maikadra, as if it is a footage corresponding to the news they were covering about Aksum. Now, you might think this is a simple mistake, but the Kadra attack, as just Jeff mentioned earlier, happened on November 9th, 2020, just 5 days after the war started. And there is a video evidence that VOA misattributed the footage. Later, they removed the online video from their YouTube account, but they refused. So they removed it as after an outroar, but they refused to issue a correction to their live TV audience. So this only shows that it was a deliberate use. This happened even if the TPLF leader, Dr. Debretsion himself, reported on his November 14th, that's 5 days after the massacre, on his war address, he denied carrying it out, but he admitted that the victims were Amhara. He himself, no human rights organization, no major media that has been reporting on Ethiopian issue, and especially about the conflict in Tigray, ever mentioned that video. Imagine, this is from the horse's mouth. This is the TPLF leader saying the victims are Amhara. Nobody ever mentioned that, and we have the video. On one of the recent statements, I'm wrapping up, the European Union issued a statement as if the victims from the same event, Kadra, were Tigrayan, despite the fact that plenty of international journalists and human rights organizations of both non-Ethiopian and Ethiopian origin have reported on the issue. Just to add on this, multiple pictures of Amhara genocide from Wallagga, Metekel, Shawa, the southern region have been used to raise awareness as if being misused, as if it happened elsewhere. And we're not saying crimes should not be reported, whether it's in Tigray, in Oromo region, in Amhara, in southern region. We have an ethnic system with a lot of ethnic problems and strife, and every single individual needs to get justice, especially if they're targeted because of their ethnicity, because you can't do nothing about it. This is something you're born into. But we think it's a trifecta of injustice, to be attacked, to be murdered, and your pictures to be used as if the victims are others and you are the killer. And there are plenty of examples of this. The use of pictures of different events is so rampant that it is important to geolocate every evidence that is reported as an evidence of genocide. It doesn't matter for which side, but everything has to be in detail has to be looked at, because the more you misuse pictures, the more that these evidences cannot be used to give justice to the real victims. Just to wrap up, while the war has shifted on Amhara and Afar regions since the June 2021, since the unilateral ceasefire has been issued by the government, international media, I'm wrapping up, still reports the war as if it happens in Tigray. They call it war in Tigray. This is as Amhara civilians are stranded with no food, no amenities, where TPLF is forced conscripting children to use as human shield, where rape and gang rape is widespread all over the TPLF-occupied territories of Amhara regions. More than anything, the complete indifference to the Amharas that are being targeted still both at the war front and the rest of the country is yet the major assault on the survival of these targeted people. It is simply lying by omission. Like right this moment, over 40,000 Amharas are stranded in a small district in Wallagga Oromo region. It's a place called Kirumu. They have been sending out harrowing voice messages for help. Rather than deploying help, regional government forces actually left the area. So right now, right groups are actually just demanding, forget about their rights to live anywhere in the country, but just allow the mass exodus, just let them live alive. So this is how much the problem has evolved from last time that we had that program. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to highlight this problem.
Thank you, Senait. And yeah, please. And I'm sure there are much more things to say about that and much more details, but we will come back to that later, and also to the question what we can do about it.